This is not protest. It is organised, violent thuggery. And it has no place on our streets or online. Right now, there are attacks happening on a hotel in Rotherham. Marauding gangs intent on law breaking, or worse. Windows smashed, fire set ablaze, residents and staff in absolute fear. There is no justification, none.
British Prime Minister Keir Starmer at a press conference yesterday. Hundreds of people have been arrested in violent riots that have spread across the UK in recent days. The catalyst was a knife attack at a Taylor Swift-themed dance class near Liverpool. 3 young girls were killed and 8 other children wounded. False information quickly spread on social media, claiming the culprit was a Muslim refugee. Anti-immigrant and far-right protesters attacked a mosque. They set fires to a hotel housing asylum seekers and clashed with police. Joining me now is Zahed Amanullah. He's a senior fellow at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue, a nonprofit think tank that focuses on combating extremism and misinformation. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Madeleine.
All right. So let's go back in time to this horrific knife attack. The killer is underage. He's 17 years old, but a British judge actually released his identity to try to quell all of the information, the false information that was spreading online and contributing to all of these riots. Tell us more, if you can, about this 17-year-old who was not an asylum seeker. He was a British subject.
That's right. The 17-year-old, normally the name wasn't released as a matter of law in the UK. Under 18s are protected in that manner. But because there was a huge public interest in releasing his name, specifically to counter the misinformation that had gone around about this person's identity. Now, the person, his family is from Rwanda. He was born and raised in the UK. They're a Christian family. And the misinformation that was going around, of course, was this person was given another name, an Arabic name. He was told he was Muslim and a recent immigrant who had come over on the channel. And it was important, the government felt and the judge felt that was released so that people would understand that the misinformation was real and people were being mobilized under false pretenses.
So we don't know much more about him or what prompted this attack, this horrific attack.
No,
right?
No,
okay.
Other than yeah, exactly. Other than disavowing the misinformation, this is an under 18 individual, and they're still protected by law until the case proceeds.
Right. Okay. So meanwhile, these attacks proceed around the country, these riots, I should say. And what happened? How did this initially begin?
Well, to understand what's happened, we have to look back at the ecosystem of the far right, the environment that we're living in today, where many on the far right in Europe have been disenchanted with electoral failures in the UK and in France. And there was a simmering discontent about immigration, but as with a lot of immigration issues in the UK and Europe, Muslim migrants, of which there are many crossing the English Channel, are often the ones to blame, that the far right are choosing to blame for the ills that they see. So this was actually an instance of exploiting an issue. There were state actors involved, sites linked to Russia, for example, that were spreading disinformation about this person's identity, false identity. And it became an excuse to sort of stir up riots against migrants, but also against Muslims and mosques in particular. That's the unique aspect of this that hasn't been necessarily the case in the past, although there's been a heightened state of alert for mosques and Muslims in the UK. And it just spread. It spread because, there's an ecosystem online and social media, multiple platforms, not just one, where trust and safety systems have broken down. And popular influencers, lots of them, not just one, have exploited the issue. And now that we've had a weekend of unrest, there are more protests and planned riots planned essentially in British cities in the middle of the week, and people have to remain vigilant for that.
And also, isn't it true that they're not necessarily mobilizing in a way that traditional protest groups would mobilize in the past by giving intent that they're going to protest and getting, I don't know, a police permit or any of that, that it's just kind of spreading online and people are showing up.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were trying to attribute these protests to organized extremist groups like the English Defence League, for example, which has been dormant or actually non-existent for the past several years. What you have is a loose conglomeration of far-right sympathizer groups being told to show up in different locations around the queue, and they generally are areas of deprivation where they can find a ready audience, and they're just told to sort of show up in particular points. Now, the thing with the Stockport issue is because the rumor there was that it was a Muslim, people congregated around a mosque in Stockport, and that's where you saw the anti-Muslim violence.
Mm-hmm.
So as a result, that's become the pattern, and the anti-Muslim sentiments have come out enough so that the government has taken a strong stand on protecting mosques. They've actually released new funds to protect mosques. And they've specifically called out anti-Muslim sentiments in order to quell the potential, protests from gaining in popularity. So, but as long as people want to stir up sentiments around migration in general and using Muslims as a community to blame, we don't see this subsiding anytime soon.
Mm. So how big is this movement, this far-right anti-immigrant movement, and does it have any overlap with the Brexit movement?
It does. In fact, you have a lot of the same influencers who were behind the Brexit movement and behind the rhetoric on immigration, helping to support and mobilize these protesters. One of the things that's interesting about it is that, of course, the UK just had a general election several weeks ago where the political parties most associated with the views that a lot of these people have on migration, won 4 seats out of a 650-seat parliament. There's a clear minority of views that are supporting that. So, and in the aftermath of a lot of these protests, you've seen communities come out in droves to support mosques, to support Muslim communities, to support migrants. You might recall that a hotel housing migrants was set alight. This has caused huge disquiet amongst people who want to protect their communities. And so I would say that this is a very loud but very fringe minority amongst British society. But unfortunately, they get a lot of attention and a lot of opportunities for people to exploit that attention for whatever gain, even like I mentioned, state actors, but also other extremist groups, and of course, other influencers and people online to promote, traffic to social media sites.
And Keir Starmer has been PM for, less than a month. How has he done in handling this?
He's done exceptionally well. And one of the reasons why is Keir Starmer was head of the Crown Prosecution Service in 2011, the last time we had major riots in the UK. So, and he was responsible for putting over 1,000 people in prison as a result of those riots. So he's coming in as prime minister with a prosecutor's background. And so he's immediately put that message out there that he's not just someone who wants to ensure that the people who are committing violence are treated to the fullest extent of the law, but he's doing this as someone who actually did put people in prison for rioting. So he's come out very strongly. He's come out very strongly, again, in support of Muslim communities. I live in a rural community in the north of England, and I was in, Bradford, one of the cities that is actually being targeted in the middle of the week. I was just there on Saturday. And, there's a lot of people who are appreciative that the government is taking a strong stand. They're afraid. They're looking for strategies to sort of quell the disturbance. In past cases, a lot of people have wanted to counter protest, and you have a lot of imams coming out and encouraging young people not to do that and for the police to do their job. That'll go a long way in making sure that these riots aren't conflicts, which then involve greater numbers of people amongst the communities that are being targeted. So we don't want to see that. And I think by Keir Starmer taking his strong stance, he's made sure that possibility is more remote.
Well, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
That's Zahed Amanullah, Senior Fellow at the Institute for Strategic Dialogue. Coming up, why the Justice Department is suing TikTok. And later, where will the unhoused go in San Francisco? The city doesn't have enough shelter beds, but is removing encampments. Those stories are next on Press Play.